dependence on him is to just bring it to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And that's really why I want to start with the Family Foundation, the private family foundation, because it's all about doing the Lord's work on earth. Really, it's about what you feel you're called to do, to share the gospel and to make a difference, to shepherd, as you said. That's a great word. It's all because the Family Foundation and the private family foundation is all about stewardship. You know, we don't really ever own anything on this planet or this in this world, because, you know, when we go, we don't take it with us, right? So, yeah. So that was beautiful. So I'm going to share this presentation. So you can see this, the Family Foundation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have every 10th word has a delay. So our connection has a little bit of a delay right now. It's not as
I noticed
instant as
that
it
too.
was when we were on the phone.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go slow. So the idea behind the private family foundation is you have a for-profit business, and when you combine it with a charitable cause or the Lord's work, it's a combination that really nothing can stop, right? And it is what, you know, the people that, when you look at Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they all have foundations. And, you know, why is that? Well, it's because that's how they can multiply. So just to quickly go through some of them: Bill and Melinda Gates, 50 billion. Musk has 5.7 billion in his. Templeton, John Templeton was the financial guru when I was growing up, and I didn't know he had a foundation. So he's passed away quite a few years ago, but he was a very wise man when it came to stewarding your money. And then Oprah, she's got 2.6 billion. So it seems to be what everyone's doing. Members of Congress, they're there to serve the public good, and they have over 1,000 nonprofit foundations that different members of Congress are linked to. So when you're looking at receiving grants, foundations get 70 times more yeses than the average person off the street. And so the private family foundation, it doesn't have as its purpose or part of its deal to like have a telethon or to, you know, have some big event to raise money. 99% of the time, it's just like whoever sets it up, they have money and they put the money in, and the foundation, you know, stewards that money. But there are a lot of different areas where you could go and get money and get grants to speed things up. And it's really our money, right? Like when the government gives out a grant for something, it's our tax money that they're giving out, right? So this is just a way to, you know, access our money and do things quicker, right? If we go and we look at different ways that we can receive grants. And that's what this particular presentation is a little bit more about. So the first place, go ahead. We're good? See, I can't tell if you're locked up or I'm locked up.
Man, I might have to switch back to my phone because I had such a clear connection on my phone, but I'm not having a clear enough connection to maintain the conversation right now.
Okay. Do you want to see if you mute the computer and then you can still see the slides? There. How's that?
Yeah, that's live. I can hear you verbatim saying
Okay,
it.
good. And I'll just remove that. So you can still see the screen, right?
Yeah, I can see the screen on the computer, and I can hear you as you're talking now without the buffer.
Perfect. Okay. So we had talked before about, checker players and chess players. And when, someone has this wonderful idea, they want to feed, the homeless or something.
I muted it, but it's still playing on the computer for some reason.
That sometimes happens. Oh, yes, we get that echo. You could turn the volume on your computer right down.
Oh man, you're not talking to a tech savvy guy, man. I speak swerf and curve. Give me a chainsaw, and I can make it happen for you. I speak swerf and curve. Give me a chainsaw, and I can Okay, I'm with you.
All right. So you can only see the presentation on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this is just like my outline to follow more than it is anything else. So we had talked about, checkers versus chess. So when someone says, oh, I have this idea, I want to feed the homeless, and then they go say, maybe talk to the mayor, the mayor, and they, this is Joe Smith, and I want to feed the homeless. They immediately say, this is a checkers player and not really serious, and we don't need to spend too much time. You get a nice chat with the mayor. He says, yeah, we'll think about it, and never hear from them again. Whereas if you go in and you say, this is Scott Patton of the Inner City Food Foundation, all of a sudden, just with that, they know, it's like code, that you are a chess player. And then the rules all change. They really want to work with you, and everything changes. So doors open when you're the founder of a foundation that are closed pretty tightly when you're just, the average Joe on the street. And it's all by design. So the first place that we go when we have a foundation is Google, because Google has a number of programs for charitable organizations, social organizations. They want everyone to think that they're wonderful, and this is one of the ways that they do it. So they have ad grants of $10,000 per month to promote your good works. And I was talking to a friend of mine who had set up a Canadian foundation actually a year and a half ago, and every day his account is topped up to $385, $10,000 a month. And whether he spends the money or not, it gets topped up. And
that's just for him to be able to run ads on Google.
That's exactly right. Can he run ads for his business on Google? Yeah, he can run any ad he wants. Google doesn't care. They just know that you're a chess player, you're responsible, and you're going to do good works. So one thing you could do is you could say, I'm going to do I'm going to feed the kids in the inner city, and I'm going to do a food drive. And you could use your ads to promote that. You could also say, I'm going to run a bunch of ads on tree trimming, and every lead I get, every lead my business gets from that ad, I'm going to make a donation to the Grant Foundation of $10 or $100 or whatever you think is fair. And so you get the write-off of the donation, and you get the ads, right? Like this is not about putting for-profit businesses out of business by using your foundation. However, there's definitely things that and you'll see more that we can use to leverage it. Now, Google owns YouTube, and they also have a nonprofit program where they'll give you $1,000 to $5,000 per month to promote your good works on YouTube. So that's, $15,000 a month in ads. I mean, that's just insane, right? And that's $180,000 annually. Okay, so this is, well worth getting a foundation for no other reason. And then Facebook has a similar thing. Last year, they awarded $100 million in grants to small businesses. Okay. Now, so that's basically like the social media giants. What about the government? So if you go and look at the government, they give out $500 billion annually in grants to state and local governments. And the state and local government's responsibility is to put out that money to, foundations and organizations that are going to help the state and local communities. Well, that's your money. Like, make no mistake about it, right? When the federal government says, we just gave, I don't know, UNICEF $10 million for something, they gave your money to them, right? So this is all about how you use your money. So Small Business Administration, they have provides small business grants and grants to states and eligible community organizations, that would be your private family foundation, to promote entrepreneurship. So if one of the things that you wanted to do was, bring Christ into the workplace, this would be I'm just going to be suggesting tie-ins to what we're talking about, right? So one of my clients is in North Carolina. And so I looked at North Carolina, and the state, the Office of Finance, had $35 million in government grants to give out. And the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, had a small business recovery grant, and they had $30 million, which they granted to 2,500 businesses. So, as a private family foundation, there's lots of money. It's not just your money that can go into the foundation and do the good work that you want to do. You can use the foundation to leverage things that are out there already, right?
Yeah.
And I say this a few times in the presentation, you have a 70 times better chance of receiving grants as a foundation than you do as an average person off the street. It's not even comparable, right?
What about the difference between a 501c3 and a foundation?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, like the private family foundation is a 501c3. So you can write out, donation tax receipts whenever you get a donation. Then the third area is other foundations. So, it's interesting because we always talk about, if you want to be successful, like model successful people and organizations. And yet when it comes to small businesses, we never talk about modeling this aspect of large businesses, right? So for example, Walmart, they have a foundation and they provide more than $1 billion in cash and in-kind giving annually. It's a lot of money, right? So you have a project. So we're gonna get into an example of a project that has to do with tree removal, but I was almost started now, but I don't think now is the best time. They also have, so basically when you find a foundation and you think, well, maybe this foundation will fit in with my goals and what I want to accomplish, then you look at, because they're going to have, what is our mission? What do we want to do? So one part of the Walmart Foundation is health and human services. They want to provide blah, 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 or shelters for low-income individuals and families in the local service area. So in this case, I was thinking about one of my friends who's a real estate investor, and he fixes homes, right? So this would be something that he could be of interest to him, right? And they also have community and economic development, so improving local communities for the benefit of low-income individuals and families in the local service area. So, that might fit with, what you want to do. Now, Home Depot, they also have a foundation, and it works to improve homes and lives of U.S. veterans. So, outreach to U.S. veterans, how can you help them? And they have invested over $400 million in veteran causes and improved more than 50,000 veteran homes and facilities. So these are not small numbers, and they're not small projects that they're doing, right? And so, so private family foundations have a 70 times better chance of receiving grants than the average person on the street. So let's think about this for a second. So you can, the other thing is your private family foundation has a mission, has a purpose, has goals, and it can work in conjunction, like synergistically, with your tree removal business. So let's say, for example, there's a lot in the city that belongs to the city. It's undeveloped. It's full of bush and brush and trees. And you said, you know what, this would be a really good place for, families to meet and play. Like, why don't we develop this into a park? And you come up with this entire plan of how you want to do it, and everything else. You go to the city says, yeah, for sure. Like, we would, rezone it as a park or whatever. And then you go to Walmart and Home Depot and you say, we need benches and we need kids' play areas and we need this and we need that. And they all go, yeah, this would be really good. So now you have the foundation it's raised some money from the city. It's got maybe some of your money. The Walmart Foundation says, yeah, we'll give you some money. Plus we'll give you a bunch of stuff from the store that you need. Home Depot says, yeah, like, we've got lots of kids, playground stuff and benches, and just give us a list of what you want. And when you need it, come and get it. And so and then the foundation turns around and says, well, we need somebody to do the work. So they hire your company. Your company goes in, and through your planning, you remove some of the trees, you remove a bunch of the brush, you hire a landscaper, I guess. And I mean, some of it would apply to your business and some of it might not, but that's okay, because those are local businesses in your community that you're also helping, right? And so those are the sort of things that you could, and we don't know what your foundation is doing or anything else. So this is all guessing and storytelling as opposed to anything else, but just to give you, an idea, right? So this is something I try to put into all of my presentations. The secret to success is to own nothing but control everything. So it's not about, because our society has just taught us, like, your personal worth is tied into, the type of car that you've got, the nice home that you have, all of those things. When we know that we're stewards of it, we're not really owners of anything. But this concept of I got to own it and everything else gets in the way of us doing what God put us here to do. So donations to the foundation get a 30% tax deduction. Okay, so if you donated, let's say an individual's income is $100,000. That's what he's going to pay tax on. He can donate 30% of that, 30,000, and get a tax deduction of 30,000. So now he's paying tax on 70,000. One of the reasons why Walmart has a foundation, well, they all have a foundation really, is because donations from a foundation or a trust to a foundation is 100% tax deductible. So if they made $1 billion and they were going to pay tax on $1 billion, they could donate it to a foundation and get $1 billion tax write-off. So that's kind of the difference between a checker player and a chess player, right? You can get a 30% tax deduction, or you can get 100%. So if your adjusted gross income is $2 million, you can donate $600,000 cash and write it off, or you could donate like a house if you had a $600,000 house and donate it to your foundation. So tax deductions to a 501c3 foundation. You get and the tax deductions could be, carried forward. So if you could only made a $500,000 donation and could only write off a half of it, then you could write off the next year the rest of it, right? So this is kind of what it looks like over here. You have a cash donation to the family foundation. You get a tax deduction. You can also set assets. One of the things that's really big in the world of private family and foundations, and I don't really understand it, is people have houses and they don't want to do anything with the house, and they end up donating it to a foundation, and the foundation fixes it up and it becomes like a foster home or something that helps the foundation do what they do, and they get the people get a good tax deduction for that, and the foundations get property. So it's a big thing that's going on. The other thing is it's a legacy issue, right? Foundations go on and on and on forever as long as you have money to give out or do your projects and people to run it. So the foundation never dies, and however you set it up, it can continue for generations and generations. So this is now let's going to talk about what a family foundation is. It's a private foundation is an independent legal entity set up for solely charitable purposes, and it's a very specific kind of trust. It eliminates capital gains taxes. It has no income tax, and it's tax exempt. In other words, it has no sales taxes, and it adds to the tax benefit of a personal trust or a business trust. And the reason it's all set up this way is because its purpose is to improve the community. So the Attorney General and the government and everyone else in that arena, whether we agree with them or not, their purpose is to improve the lives of the citizens. So they know that they can't just do it all themselves. So they've created this way for people who care about their communities to be able to take a more active role in improving their community. Now, an important part of the Private Family Foundation are family retreats. And the reason for the retreats are, like a week every quarter, a week every half year, or a week every year, it's really up to you, is because your family needs to be on board and understand what the foundation is doing and what it's about. One of the things that really separates chess players from checkers players, in my opinion, is checker players don't tell their kids anything about the estate of the family. My parents, the only thing I ever knew about my parents' monetary situation was in 1969 or 72, I forget exactly when, they finished paying off the house and there was no mortgage on the house. So they had this little celebration. But how much they've got in their estate, how much I'm going to inherit one day if I inherit anything, what their financial situation is, have no clue. I know they're fine, but I have no clue. And that's what we're taught. It's like, no, this is private and you shouldn't be telling anybody. And that's not the way it works with private family foundations, because your children are going to take over. And so this is what the Kennedys do and the Rockefellers do, and these people that have generational wealth, right? Their children never have to worry about anything because the trusts and the foundations and everything else are set up and they're managed, and money issues are a non-issue for that group of people. And part of the reason is that every year they get together with the family and they say, this is what we're doing and this is what's happening, and if you have any questions. And when the kids are 5, it's like, Dad, when can we go to play in Disneyland? And when they're 10, it's like, this is kind of boring stuff, why do I have to be here? But by the time they're in their 20s and 30s, it's, yeah, like, you're going to be taking over this one day and running it, and this is what we do. And they may say, feeding the inner kids in the city it's old news. Like they're fine. They've got enough food, right? So, but I think that this other project or other purpose is something that we really need to focus on. So now you, as the kind of elder in the foundation, and them as the coming of age elders, if I can put it that way, the new leaders, right? Because you're not going to want to be doing all of this in your 90s. You work together to figure out what is the project, how do we do it right, how do we, steward the money properly, and all the rest of it. And so then they take over. The trusts are the same. The trusts are dynasty trusts, which means that they last till the last descendant passes, 20 years after the last descendant passes away. So if these people don't know how to run the trusts and how to run the foundation, I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5 generations from now, then it's going to collapse, right? And not work. So these private family foundation family retreats are a legitimate expense of the private family foundation. Everyone expects you to go and do it. You cannot do it at home because you call the meeting and someone says, "Oh, said I was going to meet my buddy. Now I got to go." And another one's, "Oh, I got to, yoga practice," and then they're all off. Whereas when you grab them and take them to a desert island somewhere, then you have that kind of captive audience, and they have a great experience, right? They get out and they see the world. So the Private Family Foundation has a number of do's and don'ts, and because we're going through this, I'll send you this presentation, and I'm recording it, so I'll send you the video. You can scroll through it as you want. But I always want to talk about the do's and don'ts because some would say that they're common sense, but common sense is not very common in my opinion. So the do's are you do receive donations from yourself and other sources. Typically, you don't run around trying to, raise money, knocking on doors. You want to, support this. But if somebody wants to give you money, you can accept it. And one of the things that we talked about before is there's a lot of money being spent by the government and large corporations to do good in the world, and why not tap into that? So grant writing is going to be an asset. And then you manage the assets of the foundation. You make good investments. You spend 5% on the foundation's goals. So what that means is the foundation on December 31st has a certain amount of asset value. And let's just say it's $100,000. Then that means that in the following year, sometime you have to spend a minimum of $5,000 on the foundation's goals. Now, that $5,000 could be spent on administrative things. It could be spent on the family retreats. It could be spent on food to feed the inner city children. So some people are like, but I mean, if you've got like $10 million, that's a lot that 5% is a lot of money. However, everything that goes into the foundation is, pre-tax dollars. So there's, that's part of it too. And then you have to make sure all the filing requirements are done. And we have accountants and stuff that look after that if you need it. The don'ts are no self-dealing, which is stealing. The foundation might have a credit card or a debit card, and you go buy McDonald's and think, I'm hungry. I just got this card. I'm just going to use it. So, I mean, you can, but then you call the bookkeeper and the accountant and you tell them, and they move everything the right way so that it's not, because if it's one thing, if you take the mayor out for lunch, that's a private family foundation expense, a legitimate one, because you want to pitch him on your project. But when you're just driving around, I just want an ice cream cone or something, and then it starts small and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's should I have to say this? No, but don't steal. No bad investments. So when you get the foundation going and I come up to you and tell you about this bridge that I've got in the Bronx, thank you very much, Scott. See you later, right? No politics. You might not like the mayor, but your foundation can't, give $100,000 to his opponent, and you can't have big signs in your windows and no politics, right? Because you have to work with whoever is in power, and no active ownership. Active ownership means tree removal service, right? That's an active business, and the foundation can't start a restaurant, right? Now all of a sudden it's got all these deductions and the donations and everything else, and puts all the restaurants in the neighborhood out of business. That's not what it's there for. So no active ownership, no active business. I want to go back to the no politics just for a second. Sometimes the way we need to cause change in our society is to have a protest, to get out on the street and show our signs and everything else. But oftentimes the best way to make change is within the system, where you say, okay, the city is meeting and they're going to be talking about what to do with this forest land, right? So you go to the meeting, you find out who's on the committee, you talk to the people on the committee, because what we want to do is turn this into a park. The city wants to turn it into a factory and pollute the river, right? So you meet these people, you talk about your vision, your dreams, your goals, why this is important, and you start swaying them. Instead of having a factory there, now you've got this park, and the community is in far better shape and far healthier. Okay. I'm obviously assuming that the factory is unhealthy, but so working with the system is a big part of how the family, first of all, you have access to the system in ways that you wouldn't otherwise, and you have the ear of people that really would just give you a cursory listen instead of really paying attention, because you're a chess player, like you're a serious player, you've got a foundation. Most people don't. So it's easy to set up. There's just some documents that you fill out. You have to assign some roles, directors, and that sort of thing. As soon as you start one, you get an EIN number. So the foundation has its own bank accounts. You follow the rules. And I think I'm pretty much near the end of this. The IRS approves the foundation as a nonprofit. Generally speaking, this process takes 8 to 9 months, but some people on our team, they're the people that when the IRS has a question about foundations and taxation, they call them. So we work very, very closely with them. We've seen some approvals in days. You start using the foundation immediately. It's just the IRS sends you this letter that says that, yes, you are what you say you are, and you can use, but you don't really, you don't run around showing it to people usually unless they ask for it, and nobody usually asks for it. You say, this is the foundation, and here's my website, and okay, great. So we've seen the approval in a couple of days. Normally it's 2 to 3 months to get the approval, but you don't need the approval to start working with the foundation. And just to talk a little bit about the difference between checkers and chess again, the IRS has divisions, and they have a specific division which monitors foundations. This division does not talk to any other division. It doesn't, I liken it to like a country club for the IRS, right? Like these people, they might meet you, they might not meet you. They basically glance over the documentation you put in, and unless there's a glaring error, they just leave you alone, right? Whereas if you don't dot your T and cross your I properly, they're coming to do an audit if you've got some sort of business. So you're treated totally differently as a foundation than you are as a checkers player. And there are, this can be used for good, this can be used for ill, like most things in the world. And the Clinton Foundation has had a number of scandals. And despite the fact that they've had these scandals, nothing has happened. Like, nobody's really, there's no congressional investigation going on, and there's nothing, right? So it's kind of this level where it's not that you can do anything you want, it's just you're treated differently than an LLC or an individual, right? And there's no reason why you can't be at that level and have access to support and help financially, and physically, people working on stuff and advice and everything else that all the big foundations get and all the big companies get. So that's okay. So we're done done with that part. So any questions on that? Any comments, anything that strikes you?
Do you have a client that's been in a foundation for more than a 10-year period that would be willing to talk to me?
So can you ask the question again? I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit.
Do you have a client that's been in a foundation for more than a 10-year period that would be willing to talk to me?
I'm not sure. So let me ask Barry. And I mean, I think so. I just don't know. So the answer is yes, now that I've thought about it. I just have to figure out who to talk to find out who it is to get to see if they want to talk to you. Did I lose you? Oh, no, you're game.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, guys were looking for direction, so I had to send a text really quick.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I'll get that for you. And so now what I'd like to do is quickly go through more on the trusts. How are we doing for time?
We got about 15 minutes.
I think I'm the same. I'm just checking. No, okay, good. All right, so I'll go through some of this quickly and then we'll probably have to get together again. And I'll send this to you as well, so you can review it. Okay, so basically, when the game is chess, don't play checkers. You know, getting the money is easy, keeping it is hard. Before you get the money, it looks like that's the hard part, but really, once you've got the money, there are a lot of people that want to take it from you, from the government to con men to lawyers. The taxman wants his cut. And things are changing. Like President Joe Biden proposed nearly doubling the capital gains tax. It did not go through. But once these things get floated or they're put into these massive bills, they're going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. The infrastructure bill authorized $3.5 trillion in spending. So I don't think it actually got $3.5 trillion in spending, but that's like an excuse to raise taxes, right? And of course, now we're seeing inflation going up and all that stuff. So those are all things that take away your money. Then they're talking about the RISE Act of capping your IRA. They're talking about capital gains being taxed regardless of whether you've sold something or not. This isn't applicable to us. So we live in a fast food society. We expect immediate gratification. The government tells you put money in an account to save for retirement, and they give you a tax refund to do it. I have a saying, it's short-term gain for long-term pain, or short-term pain for long-term gain. So I might want an ice cream cone, but if I have it and then I have another one tomorrow and so on and so on and so on, whenever I want it, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to have heart attacks and diabetes and all that sort of good stuff. So that's short-term gain. Yay, I got an ice cream cone. For long-term pain, I'm fat and miserable. If I say I'm not going to have it, then that's short-term pain because I feel, oh man, I really want to have this ice cream cone. But I have long-term gain because I'm slim, I'm trim, I'm fit, I'm healthy. So it's the same with our finances. Like I look at the Roth stuff, the IRAs, and I think, yeah, like we're giving you $500 of your money, right, to put whatever the amount is in some account that's going to grow tax-free, but I'm going to tax you when the money comes out. So between inflation and tax rates changing and everything else, the government's long-term is they're going to get more money, right? So I think that oftentimes stuff we do is right along this McDonald's mentality of we want it right now, instant gratification, when that's not the way it is. You plant the seed, you water the seed grows, it grows throughout the summer. In the fall, you harvest the fruits. You don't put the seed in and tomorrow get the fruit. So all they do is defer taxes and then you have to pay for it, or your children. If you pass away and the IRA goes to your children, you have 10 years. So you got $1 million. You got to take out 100,000 a year. Well, if your children are making $100,000 a year, you've doubled their income. You put them in a new tax bracket. It's not necessarily better. So I think that's IRA and the Roths are bad advice, but I don't want to get into that. So the game is chess. Don't play checkers. Federal lawsuits have gone up from the pandemic, and so we need to be able to protect your assets. And if you love your children, you want to pass your generational wealth intact. But generally speaking, the way people do their present tax estate or their estate planning, it's going to put financial burdens on our children and their children. So don't pass on your tax obligations. And they're talking about a wealth tax. For the wealthiest, it could be 61%. So just imagine, Bill Gates, if you inherited his money and you had to pay 61% of 50 billion. It didn't get passed, but they're talking about it more and more. The UK has an inheritance tax, and they'll all do the same thing. They always do. They'll start with a huge, you have to have $100 million in the estate, and everyone will go, oh, I'll never have that. Then they'll inflate everything like crazy, and before you know it, everyone's got $100 million in it, and then they're going to get 61% of that. So we're going to talk about protecting your wealth, keeping the tax man off, and how to leave a legacy. So you're in the right place. And I'm just going to skip this part. Our founder is Dr. Gina Gaudio-Grace. She's the founder and senior partner. She's a graduate of Notre Dame Law School with a PhD in entrepreneurship. She studied trusts for over 30 years. She was the lead note editor at the Notre Dame Law Review, 1990-91. She's a retired attorney, and she has 20 years experience as a business strategist and leverage consultant. So we don't have to talk about this. Everyone's going to tell you there's nothing you can do but pay whatever your LLC taxes are, whatever your income taxes are. But that's because we've been taught to play checkers when the real game is chess, and no wonder the tax man is about to knock over your king. So there's two types of wealth, what I call the old wealth and the new wealth. And even if you're over 70, that doesn't mean your wealth is old wealth. Because what I'm really talking about are the people that have had their wealth for a long time. And the old wealth is not worried about what the tax man does. It's not worried about the 2,600 pages in the tax laws and the tens of thousands of regulations and rules, pages of rules and that sort of stuff. Why? Because, guess who makes those rules? So Maria Shriver is JFK's niece. She's worth $100 million. And the family's lasting wealth is attributed to the fact that Joseph P. Kennedy, he made his fortune in insider trading, tucked the money into dozens of trusts, which means the children didn't have access. We know the children want candy, right? They want the hot car. They'll spend the money like until it's gone, right? They have no idea what it takes to build that money, to get that money, because they didn't do it. So the idea of the trusts is you have control of the money even after you've passed away, and you have people managing the money for these people, and it grows and it grows. And usually if it's in a trust like the way they probably have it set up, I don't know for sure, it's growing tax-free or tax-deferred. And it's interesting, he made his money in insider trading. And I imagine he probably talked to Congress people after he made his fortune and said, we need to stop this insider trading, because he didn't want anyone else to make a lot of money. So who makes the rules? The U.S. government started taxing U.S. citizens in 1913. And, who had influence on those people that were drafting the law? Probably the wealthy who didn't want their fortunes taxed. And so, as I said before, it's over 2,600 pages. The tax code changed over 4,000 times from 2001 to 2012. I assume it's changed just as many times from then to now. So who can keep up with all of this stuff? It's like we said yesterday, we're hiding everything. They're hiding everything in plain sight. The U.S. Reconciliation Bill is 2,400 pages. The Build Back Better bill. The Infrastructure Bill is 2,700 pages. So, if you have to read it to make sure you're going to be okay, you're playing checkers, because the chess players, whatever's in there is not going to affect them. So Hidden in the tax laws and codes are short subsections which ensure the old wealth keeps its wealth. You know, in the beginning, the Kennedys, Rockefellers, Fords did everything they could to protect their wealth, and that hasn't changed. Today's guardians are Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. There's a lot of the time they spend a lot of their effort making sure that all of those pages are read and nothing's going to impact their wealth. And so whether we like them or dislike them is irrelevant. They're keeping everything that we're doing safe and secure because the rules are the rules. So they're not worried about any of the new laws. And it's really time for us to not be worried either. Just play checkers, stop playing checkers, right? So one of the things that the old wealth does that we don't is they own nothing and they control everything. So, I mean, if you were to look at, if you said to Elon Musk, lend me $100, but you can't, take it out of your trust, you have to take it out of like your bank account. He probably has nothing in his bank account because nothing he does, he pays for. His trusts and his foundation pay for everything. So they play chess, we play checkers. This is the way it used to look, right? They used to call things trusts, but people just felt like they were being abused. So the trust went underground, and people stopped talking about it, and they called them corporations instead. But the 12 years in grade school plus college were designed to train us to behave a certain way and play checkers, and that gives us little chance to win. And winning is just like living a good life and making a difference and stewarding. I was going to say stewarding our, I don't think this is the right way to say it, but stewarding our mission on Earth. So we're going to learn the golden rules of the secret game of money, which is, as I said before, the secret to success is to own nothing but control everything. So there's two structures that you need: trusts and private family foundations. The trust is a fiduciary arrangement that allows a third party or trustee to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary or beneficiaries. They will pay for all of your expenses except food, fun, and fashion. Trusts can own houses, Airbnbs, cars, boats, appliances, pay utilities, pay education costs, and much more. Beneficiaries under 21 can have their food and clothes paid for by the trust. And if the beneficiaries are over 21, the trust will still pay for their education. So your children are 30, you say, hey, Dad, I want to become a Michelin food chef, and I want to go to New York to the Michelin school there. It's, $100,000 a year. The trust can pay the tuition. It can pay for the books. It can pay for the clothes you might have, uniforms or whatever, your food while you're there, your accommodation, everything. There's over 30 types of trusts. So if you don't have the right one, you could be visited by the tax man. And our trusts are designed, by the way, to defer taxes, to protect your assets, and to create a legacy. They last for generations. Private foundation is an independent legal entity set up solely charitable purposes. That's a specific kind of trust. It has family retreats. We talked about that. How did the trust work? You can move assets. So basically, what happens now is lenders give cash. The cash, you take the cash, you put it in an investment, and you pay federal and state taxes. So what happens with this is if the cash goes into a trust, so basically you have cash, you put the cash, you lend the cash, sell the cash to the trust. Trust gives you a promissory note. The IRS has a page with the rate, and that's the rate of interest. So you have a loan it's a demand note. You can, anytime you ask for it, the trust will repay you whatever it is you ask for. And your accountant figures out how much of it is a repayment of the loan and how much of it is interest. And of course, you pay tax on the interest. You have beneficiaries and trustees in the trust, and the cash is now in the trust. It can be invested, let's say, in a mutual fund. It makes money. There are no state and no federal taxes on that. If you're a checker player, the first $12,000 is tax exempt if you don't have it in the trust, right? If you're a chess player and you take out money from the trust, if this is money, this isn't, we're talking now. So there's two types of money. There's the money that the trust spends on things like the house it buys and you live in. Okay. And then there's, you just want the money for whatever. You want to go to a casino and gamble or something awful. The first 40K is tax exempt. If it's a couple, the first 80K is tax exempt. So the big difference is if you actually needed the money, and you really wouldn't need very much, it's all tax exempt. So personal tax exemption is 12K as a checker player, 24K as a couple, grandmasters 40K single, and 80K as a couple. The top tax rate for checker players is 45%, chess masters 20%. So you see there's two sets of rules for two different sets of people. And how do you go from being in one group to the other group? You get a trust in the foundation, and it automatically puts you into the group that gets all the benefits. So the other thing is when you have a trust, there's no limit to the donations you can make to a foundation. Okay. So in other words, you get 30% tax deduction if you're an individual. You get 100% tax deduction if you're a trust. Again, two sets of rules.
And so my trust would be the Wilkie Family Trust, and my foundation would be the Seattle Freedom House, where guys are where our mission is to build and train men to advance the kingdom of God in the earth.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Yeah. All right. I really,
okay.
I got sparked with a whole bunch of conversations to have with other people I know in the lane, but I want somebody outside of my network to try to pick their brain to learn about this a little bit more. But I've got 3 people in my mind who I think are already playing in this lane that I've just never known to ask these kinds of questions to. Okay. And so I want to go start doing my homework. I appreciate you sparking all the ideas.